From the blinding rays of gold in the land of the Erdtree, to the starry sky of purple it conceals beneath, it's easy to tell that the lands between are a vibrant place, and the many colors of the map serve to distinguish the biomes you'll traverse on your path to lordship. Just as we can see almost any color of the rainbow in the lands between, the equipment we find there also reflects this wide array of colors. But this time, we're going to make sure that the equipment we're using matches the color scheme of our current area. I'll only be making an exception for flasks. All other equipment must be color-coded to match our current area. For example, Limgrave is green, so our armor, weapons, consumables, and talismans must also be green. This also includes spells and casting tools. For example, even if I have a green spell, like Poison Mist, I can't use it because there are no green seals to cast it with. Using the physic is allowed, however, I can only use tiers that match the color of the area. Again, I'll use Limgrave as an example. Here, we would only be mixing green tiers into our physic. Just for clarification, equipment does not have to be entirely one color to count. That would make most areas impossible. In Limgrave, where our color is green, as long as green is the focal color of our equipment, it counts for the challenge. In order to keep things interesting, I can only use each weapon for one main boss. For example, if I use a weapon to defeat Margit in Limgrave, I can't use the same one for Godrick or any other main bosses. However, because there are so many bosses in Elden Ring, if I need to get equipment from a dungeon, I am allowed to use any weapon, including ones I've already used, as long as it matches the color scheme of the area. So basically, I will only swap out weapons for main bosses. Minor bosses in the field and in dungeons don't count towards the boss limit. The rules themselves are simple. The real challenge will be finding suitable equipment that matches the theme of each area. If the main color scheme of the area isn't super obvious, I'll use other things in the area to determine the color I'll use. In most cases, the color of the area will correspond to its map color. This is the case for areas like Limgrave and Liurnia. Other times, I'll use other factors such as the color of the sky to determine the theme, which is the case for underground areas like the Shifra River territories. Thankfully, this challenge will not be region locked, so I can travel freely to other areas to get color-coded equipment as needed. With all the explaining out of the way, we're gonna pick up the action at the abandoned cave. As I mentioned earlier, the color for Limgrave is green, so we're gonna need a green weapon before we can fight anything. I know the Venomous Fang is here somewhere, I just don't remember where, so it'll take some trial and error before I finally find it among the festering geysers. We're gonna loot some of the graveyards in Caelid so we have enough runes to buy some poison stones from the merchant here. Once we're all stocked up on those, it's time to finally set foot back in Limgrave to challenge Margit. The Venomous Fang is actually a really good choice here. His long wind-ups give us tiny windows to get in a few pokes and build up our deadly poison. One thing I need to remember after going back to Dark Souls for a while is that for many bosses in this game, you should always roll later than your gut tells you to. As long as you keep your eyes on his arms, you should be fine. I'm definitely a little rusty and had some close calls, but in the end, the poison was able to finish him before he could finish me. With our first main boss defeated, we have an extra talisman pouch to aid us in the fight against Godrick. Speaking of which, I haven't picked up any talismans yet, and there are a couple of green ones we can use that are nearby. The first one, the Green Turtle Talisman, is hidden behind an imp statue in an isolated ruin of the Summon Water Village, and the other one, the Viridian Amber Medallion, is dropped by the flower mini-boss in Tombsword Cave. Strangely, the poison flower can still be poisoned, not that it would have mattered either way. Before going to Stormvale, we're going to make a journey across the map to get our last piece of equipment. After taking the back way to Liurnia and going in a few teleporters, we'll end up in the northern part of the map, where we'll have easy access to the Grand Lift of Dectus. Why did I do all that, you ask? I did it for the fashion. Because I want to be seen green. I may have been bombed by the critics at Stormvale Castle, but in response I held my head high and bared my fangs. Jokes aside, the Venomous Fang is a really fun weapon, and it doesn't need any upgrades to tear through the early game. The deadly poison is a boon against stronger enemies like the Banished Knights, and its quick jump attacks are great for interrupting whatever they try to throw out. The only enemies that were even a problem were the birds, since they exposed my secret weakness, which is short reach. But once they're in a small room, they have nowhere to fly or throw their firebombs except Nefeli's face. As much as I like the Venomous Fang, sadly, I already used it on Margit, so we'll have to find something new for Godric. This is where those handy poisoned stones come in. If we just chuck a couple of those every few minutes, we should be good to go. It'll just take some extra patience to wait it out. After 10 minutes of standing around, when all my stones and clumps had been thrown, it turned out that it wasn't enough. I don't think I had the max amount of clumps, so I probably could have finished him off if I came back with a full stack, but I wasn't about to risk waiting around for nothing. So instead, I went back to Altus and made my way to Mount Gelmir to get to the Volcano Cave for the only other green weapon I can think of, the Coil Shield. It forms a matching set with the Venomous Fang, so naturally it too is capable of applying deadly poison with its unique weapon skill. Of course, the only time I die to Godric is when I have an actual weapon. Overconfidence will do that to you. So this time, I'll try to be more careful and choose my swings wisely. Our main source of damage is still going to be poison, but the weapon skill itself also does a lot of damage when it hits. I use that as many times as I can, and by the time my FP bar is empty, the fight's practically over anyway. Once the lethal dose has been administered, we just slowly back away and let the old man ramble on to his death. With our first great rune secured, we'll waste no time in heading towards the second one. After snagging the Blue Dancer charm from High Road Cave, we can return to Liurnia and officially declare the next color as blue. I think it's the most fitting color since Liurnia is the land of magic, and magic tends to be associated with blue in this game. With that being said, it'll be a little more difficult to find blue equipment that isn't magic-based. After all, most enemies here are resistant to magic, so we'll need an alternative. Thankfully, there is something else often associated with blue in Elden Ring, and that is frost. Most weapons that deal frost will be bluish, so we still have plenty of options for pure physical damage. The easiest one to get is the Ice Rind Hatchet. The 16 dex requirement won't be a problem with all the runes we looted from those graveyards. Since I'm already here, I decided to test it out on this Erdtree avatar here. You can see that the range isn't the best, but the moveset is a lot faster than I remembered. So despite the weapon art being stomped into the ground long ago, it's still a solid weapon on its own. The only other thing we need to do before going to the academy is a quick change of clothes. There's a merchant selling some blue armor located conveniently close to the academy gate, so that'll be easy enough. As expected, our axe does a great job at staggering the sorcerers and the frost triggers very quickly as well. Now we just have to deal with this guy. I tested out Hoarfrost Stomp just to see how it does. It definitely is not worth it. While I did manage to give the wolf Frostbite, it's way more practical to do this by using the weapon normally, not to mention much safer. Hoarfrost Stomp is pretty risky, and much more situational than it used to be. You can't just pump these out one after another without a care in the world like you could before. My fights with the Red Wolf are always pretty messy. I don't know what it is about this boss in particular that doesn't click with me, I just always die to it for some reason. I mean, look at the way he's jumping back and forth. Now he's just playing around like I'm some sort of chew toy. Even the wolf knows I'm not a threat. Pure luck alone is what won me this fight. I still don't have a clue what I'm doing. It's probably not a good sign that the Red Wolf of Radagon was giving me problems, considering that in order to get a weapon for Rennala, we have to fight this thing. Surprisingly, the axe kind of destroys this thing. I spammed R1 for the stance break and it kinda worked. I don't know why the game wouldn't give me the riposte, but whatever, I'm not too worried about this anymore. Somehow this only took 2 tries when the Red Wolf took more than 2 tries. Anyways, here's what we came here for, the Frozen Needle. It looks like we'll need a little more dex again, but we'll take care of that. And while we're at it, we can get EG to upgrade it to +3 since he sells them right off the bat. I'm thinking that'll be enough for Rennala, and once we're ready to fight, we'll clear the way to the Fog Gate by letting Moongrum do the one thing he's good at other than parrying. I got some good RNG on the first phase with all 3 of the scholars being pretty close together, so I didn't have to do any of the hide-and-seek shenanigans. Rennala herself isn't super susceptible to Frost, but the physical DPS on its own is almost enough to finish her in 1 cycle, so at least there's a maximum of 2 cycles if I screw up phase 2. I also should be benefiting at least a little from the blue Dancer charm since my equip load is relatively low. For phase 2, I started using the weapon art in hopes of getting a stagger since she has very low poise. Somehow, I didn't get a single stagger throughout the whole fight, but it wasn't a big deal since each hit gives a sort of mini stagger. I noticed that the range of the thrust is a bit deceptive. Sometimes it will be a lot shorter than expected. In some cases, I swore that I could see the blade connect, but upon closer inspection, it looks like all I did was tear her robe a little, so I guess I can justify it not counting as a hit. But instead of using the weapon art, I could have been using the special heavy attack, which I completely forgot about. Kind of like the Ice Rapier in DS2, you can shoot a projectile with the heavy attack. And since durability isn't a thing in Elden Ring, you can shoot as many as you want. I'm still upset that I didn't take advantage of the coolest part of this weapon, but regardless, it did just fine against Rennala, and this fight was done without any hassle. With 2 Great Runes, we can claim another Talisman Pouch and get access to Leyndell. But before we worry about that, there's one more thing that I'd like to get done sooner rather than later. First things first, we need to get some color-coded equipment. Nereus will make this pretty easy for us, since 1 bite is enough to poison him. I think it'll be okay if we go for another one. He didn't like that, but next time I was sure to watch my spacing, and of course I had to teabag him like a true host after I L2'd my way to victory. Now that we have our weapon, the Reduvia, we can start getting some armor next. I went back to Stormveil to get the Crimson Hood, and it wasn't there. And only when I was being bullied by the dogs did I realize that I forgot to talk to Rodrika. Oh yeah, she's still wearing it. That makes sense. I suppose the hood can't just magically appear there, can it? Okay, now we have the hood. It gives a small HP boost, so I don't see why I wouldn't use it. I'm gonna have to get used to doing a lot of running back and forth in this playthrough. After raising my arcane to 13 so I can use the Reduvia, I am once again turning to EG to upgrade it for me. I only have money to get it to +3, however, we can save some money on the Somber 4 by killing the lions in Redmane Castle to get it as a drop. So now that our dagger is up to +4, it's time for Radahn. Well, not yet. I have to kill 1 more tree for the Crimson Burst here. I also forgot that I was still in red for Caelid and forgot to switch back to green for Limgrave. I guess my whole run is invalidated now. Whatever, it's on like Radahn. The Reduvia may not look like much, but that bleed buildup really packs a punch against Radahn. The Bloodblade skill isn't too expensive either, but at my level, I need to manage my FP well to maximize those bursts of bleed. It doesn't have the best range, so I also need to be mindful of where I use it and make sure I don't get smacked in the face while I'm so close to him. So far, the first attempt was going pretty smoothly. I went for a few more pokes before he blasts off into the sky, in hopes that he'll be ready for another bleed when he gets back down. In general, I wasn't feeling so worried about this fight. Don't let him intimidate you with the rocks, he'll give you a clear warning before shooting them at you. The jumps are definitely a little scary, especially seeing how much damage I took while on Torrent. I was getting a little nervous at this point since he could easily kill Torrent and, in turn, kill me after I fall off, so I decided to try phase 2 without the horse for a little while. I was doing pretty well at chipping away his health, and just 1 more bleed would seal the deal, if it weren't for the fact that I got back on Torrent despite knowing the risks. But hey, this was just the first try. If I did that well already, this shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 attempts, right? I don't know what changed, but I did not expect to be here another hour after such a good first attempt. I've mentioned this phenomenon before, you know, when you do really well at first, and gradually degrade with each successive attempt. I'm just glad it's over with, Could you imagine if they made us fight this guy twice? Now wouldn't that be a riot? With the capital open, we might as well make our way to Altus Plateau. First I'm gonna go back to Limgrave and take care of the Tree Sentinel to get the Golden Halberd. We can also pick up the Two Fingers heirloom in the Purified Ruins for some extra faith to wield it. After that, we'll get our other talisman by taking the Transporter Trap to Lanedale for the Blessed Dew talisman. I'm not gonna bother showing most of the tree fights, but I'll show this one since it drops 2 of the crystal tears I'm gonna be using in Lanedale. I also put in the Faith Knot tier I picked up earlier because it looked kinda goldish to me. But when I look again, it honestly looks more brown, but it's not a huge deal. With the golden sunflowers, golden slams, golden grass, I think it goes without saying that the next color is gold. Altus Plateau is so easy to color code. The game makes it very clear that this is the Golden Land, and in this Golden Land, we can still find traces of the blessings once bestowed by the Erd Tree, though most of them are sad imitations, like the Icon Shield. My initial plan was to stack its regen effect with my Dew Talisman, but it ended up being too heavy with armor on, so sadly I ended up not using it. The heavy armor in question was Radahn's chest piece. It has the best defense we can get at this point, and it happens to be gold. If you want to emphasize the golden aspect even more, you can alter it to take off the red cape. Now that we've finally gathered all our equipment, we're going to test out the Golden Halberd on the Draconic Tree Sentinel. After buffing with Golden Vow and the Holy Shrouding Cracked Tier, our damage is passable for as long as the buffs last. I threw myself at this a couple more times and then realized that I forgot to upgrade my weapon, and that fact became especially obvious when the buffs wore off. So back to EG we go to get the halberd to +4, which should be just the right level to deal with this nuisance here. There we go. A few upgrades and a little more confidence was all we needed. At long last, we can enter the capital, but first, we need to find another weapon. After taking out this Black Knife assassin guarding the tomb, we can break the seal at the entrance to get the— wait, wasn't there lava here? I'm at the wrong grave, aren't I? God damn it. After going below the moat to the Ariza hero's grave, we can break the seal at the entrance to get the Golden Epitaph. Basically everything in the capital is going to be strong against holy damage, but gold free is pretty simple, so it didn't create any problems here. Since holy damage isn't super effective against Morgott, I'm gonna switch things up and try out some lightning incantations. There are plenty of golden ones, and we have the Golden Order seal to cast them with. I also am gonna pick up the cookbook to craft lightning pots for a little extra support if we need it. Now, all we need to do is get a few more levels to meet the intelligence requirement of the seal. Killing a few enemies in the field should do the trick, and as I do this, I also backtrack to get a few more cracked pots. At this point, we almost have all the levels we need, and the Crystallian duo marks the end of our farming session. So, with all these souls, we can level intelligence to 14, which isn't enough to wield the seal. But if we travel down to Shifa River and take the teleporter to the upper level, we can sneak around this Dragonkin soldier and pick up Marika's Scar Seal, which will give us exactly 17 intelligence. Now for the most important part, the incantations themselves. I'll take out this knight for the Dragon Cult prayer book, and pick up Lightning Strike from the Scarab before challenging Morgott himself. I decided to open with some lightning pots. You can see how well that went for me. He's pretty good at dodging, so I'm not going to be relying on those too much. We can only use Lightning Strike and Honed Bolt with the Faith tier, so it's important to stay aggressive and not let things drag on too long. But at the same time, I have to time my casts wisely. He's not going to just walk into them like some bosses would. It also would be wise to actually upgrade my seal. I was wondering why my lightning tier wasn't doing anything. With the upgraded seal, the fight went a lot better, but I was a little too slow and ran out of time on the physic. I didn't have any more lightning pots left, so I did what I could and tried the old Catalyst whack for a juicy 4 damage. As a last resort, I tried to use my lightning fast hard swap reflexes to shield bash him with the Icon Shield. But it wasn't the iconic clutch I had hoped for. To avoid a situation like that in the future, I bought Lightning Spear from Muriel, which I should have just done in the first place. I can use this spell without the physic, so it will be good for backup in case I can't finish in time. When I said he wouldn't walk into Honed Bolt like other bosses, I kind of just lied. At a certain distance, he will definitely just walk into it. I ended up using this exclusively over Lightning Strike because the latter is less consistent, and Honed Bolt is just so good when you have the space to chain cast it. When he was down to his last speck of health, I instinctually swapped to Lightning Spear for the finisher because I just knew the physic would wear off at the exact second I did so. Now that Morgott is out of the picture, I could go to the mountaintop straight away if I wanted, but I'm in no hurry to do any of that just yet. Instead, I've got some things to take care of in the Eternal City. First, I've got to get a red shield so I can learn the parry timings of the Bell-Bearing Hunter and Caelid and earn my victory with an honest fight. All that just for a couple of purple rocks to use in Shifra River. Sadly, it's pretty much the only purple thing I can get at this point besides certain spells. I just need to get into the Eternal City to get the Fingerslayer Blade for Ranni's quest, and the only thing standing in my way is me. We all know far too well the truth behind the saying, you are your own worst enemy. But who knew that deep in everyone's subconscious lies a pro dodgeballer? Initially, I didn't think much about a fight between two naked blue guys throwing rocks at each other, but when he healed between the few shots I managed to land, I realized how much trouble I was in. Sometimes you gotta think outside the box to challenge the source of your negative thoughts. So I got a little creative with the rules and went to the Forsaken Ruins to pick up St. Trina's sword. Yes, the weapon is more silver than purple, even the description says so, but as a sleep-themed weapon, it can be imbued with a purple mist when using the Mists of Slumber skill. As long as I can keep up the purple aura for the whole fight, I'll count it as a purple weapon. I'm really glad I remembered this weapon because it made the fight so ridiculous. It was just an endless trade between my sleep and his sleep, and I was having so much fun that I ended up forgetting to rebuff and broke my own rules. At least it's just a dorky little mimic fight. You're not supposed to take this seriously anyway. The reason for going through all that will soon be revealed. But first, I need to actually interact with Ranni so I can open the chest with the blade. Finding another blue weapon to use against Loretta isn't a problem, and for some extra protection, we can also pick up the Spelldrake Talisman in Celia. Even with her extra magic absorption, an upgraded crystal sword is still gonna tear through her. And now we can finally get the Fingerslayer Blade, give it to Ranni, and progress her quest as far as we'll need to in this playthrough. Okay, now I'll tell you why I did all this. It was for the fashion. Again. You can't even comprehend the dark depths I'll plunge to for fashion souls. Alright, this might come as a bit of a surprise, but I'm gonna go for Mohg next to get access to the DLC. I feel like it's best to get it out of the way as soon as I can, because I never know when I might need to get equipment from the Shadowlands. This is also the reason that I didn't use the Meteorite Staff or any spells on the Mimic, because I was saving them for Mohg. I'm still going to consider the color of Mohgwyn Dynasty to be purple rather than red, because technically it is a part of the Shifra territories, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but I'm only using each color once per map. So I could use red twice, but it would have to be one red region from the base game and one red region in the DLC. I can't use red for two base game areas. Obviously, I'm gonna have to respec to an intelligence build. Then I'll get my main spell of choice in the same place as the staff. Rock Sling is going to be great for staggering Mohg for some extra openings, and it does physical rather than magic damage, which should be helpful since his elemental resistances are fairly high. I didn't want to be totally defenseless, so I farmed this Cuckoo Knight for one of the few purplish pieces of armor in the game. If you want to farm anything from this guy, you can script the fight by backstabbing him during his buff, then hitting him with 2 charged heavies as he wakes up. This is good if you have a weaker weapon that can do decent poise damage. In my case, it was the Crystal Straightsword. Once I finally get his helmet to drop, I at least have something to wear in the Mohg fight. I tested Gravity Well a bit, but Rock Sling outclasses it in every way here, both in overall damage and casting speed. So from here on out, I'm just gonna stick with that one. At certain angles, it can get some nice headshots, If you manage to get those consistently, it should only take 3 casts to break his stance. However, I might have also done some poise damage with Gravity Well. I don't know if that one does significant poise damage or not. My first attempt honestly went pretty well. He got me right before the second phase could start, but eventually I reached the point where the first phase was automatic. It was the second phase that gave me problems in this fight. I ended up not having enough FP with my current flask allocation. I couldn't even use the emergency gravity stones I brought along. So after collecting all of the sacred tears I'd missed and getting as many golden seeds as I possibly could, I was ready to try again. Now it was no longer a matter of if I had enough FP, but if I could survive long enough with my terrible dodging skills. Throughout the many hours it took me to do this, I had been humbled by all the times I threw away my own victory with greed, so I understood the gravity of the situation. When it came down to the attempt that would be the last, I had played sloppily and squandered all my crimson flasks, but still had plenty of FP to finish the fight. I had to stay unbelievably calm and wait for the openings that I knew were coming, rather than try to force an opening that would inevitably fail. By having patience, I was rewarded with the perfect elevation to land the spell. Mohg may have thought I'd hit rock bottom, but in reality, I had long held the high ground. Here you can see I farmed to get my intelligence to 38 rather than 30, which ultimately helped me finish the fight, since the meteorite staff couldn't be upgraded for more damage. Having the DLC open will be good if I manage to run out of weapons for base game areas. But if all goes as planned, we should have enough weapons for one more area. I want to clear out the mountaintops to get the last few smithing stone bell bearings, and to have the way to the snowfield opened up for later. For the mountaintop itself, we'll need to find some white equipment to match the winter wasteland. The first white weapon can be found at the beginning of the game in the Tombsword ruins. I almost forgot to get the first half of the medallion. That would have been quite an inconvenience. One perk that we get with our equipment is the Opaline Bubble Tear. The focal color that you can see in the middle of the tier is white, so it's legal to use here. The last thing I'll be getting is the Godskin Swaddling Cloth, but first I'll have to beat the Spirit Godskins. These guys were giving me some trouble. To make things worse, I was missing out on some damage by not meeting the faith requirement for the scythe. Even with the Ruler's Mask to increase my faith, I still didn't have enough. So I consulted Rennala again, and came back with just enough damage to make it through without using all my flasks. Meeting the faith requirement also means I can use the skill. It's a really cool skill that can evade certain attacks and do some good poise damage. I used it to finish off the snail for all the trouble it gave me. But no matter how much you want to taunt it, do not taunt it. I repeat, do not taunt it. It has a grab, just so you know. Once we're finally done with this, we can get the Godskin Swaddling Cloth. We'll see if it ends up being useful or not. Either way, it's practically the only white talisman we can get, so we might as well put it on. On my way to Castle Sol, I took out this Mariner for Helfin Steeple, which I'll be using a bit later. Commander Nile is not one of my favorite bosses, nor is it one that I'm particularly decent at. So this could end up being a nasty fight if I don't play my cards right. Angel's Wings is a good crowd control tool to prevent the knights from teaming up. I probably would have finished them here if I had gone for a second one, but I tried to save a little FP and somehow ended up being out of range on every single swing. That's what the lock-on button is for. After a couple more tries, I was kinda getting the hang of it. I got very close to death twice with these knights, but I was able to stay calm and get a backstab on the remaining knight. And instead of instantly healing, I properly assessed the situation and decided to create some space before using my flasks. I'd say my strategy paid off. Now it's just me and him, and I've got plenty of flasks to spare. Although I did get a little too brave trying to fish for a stagger, and he punished me for that. Luckily for me, this fight has a built-in opening after he charges the big tornado move. I even got him to bleed out while he was taking a breather. I hit him enough to trigger the healing effect of the talisman, but that was balanced out by the fact that I used all my stamina in the process. Towards the end of the fight, the consequences of my greed were starting to catch up to me. But once again, I used spacing to my advantage, and baited out a ranged attack to capitalize on the small opening before he has time to retaliate. With the other half of the medallion secured, I think it's time to take a break from base game and finally start tackling the DLC areas. I'm gonna get my first weapon from this troll here in Old Altus Tunnel. The Great Club is a simple weapon fashioned out of a withered tree branch, and though it has traces of gold and some other colors, I decided I would consider its main color to be brown. Tree bark does tend to have a brownish look, and the color picker I used also said this weapon was brown. I think I'm putting too much thought into this. It's a brown stick, okay? So now that you know the color of the gravesite plane is brown, maybe I should bore you with an explanation for that one too. Well, here goes. Since the Realm of Shadow is an antithesis to the Lands Between and all its vibrant gold, the first area serves to drive this home by being in stark contrast to the Land of the Erdtree, having lost its luster long ago, and instead of being abundant with gold, has faded to a dull brown. This was honestly one of the first things I noticed when I first stepped into the DLC. The difference between the gravesite plane reveal and the first step reveal is such a great design choice. While the first step reveals the Erdtree shining brilliantly over Limgrave, accompanied by the sweet sound of strings, the gravesite plane starts with a funeral toll, with dissonance, with the implication that something unpleasant has already left its mark here, and yet awaits us under the foreboding Shadow Tree. Something unpleasant like this enemy, that many players weren't observant enough to notice on its perch before it ambushed us. Myself being many players, of course. Since the enemies in the DLC are extra tough, we can also get the Ritual Sword Talisman to boost our damage at full health. Thankfully, it's only guarded by a demi-human queen, and she's pretty squishy. I could jump straight into the first dungeon, but I'm actually gonna play it safe and cut around to Shadow Altus to pick up fragments and get some extra gear. Shadow Altus doesn't really have an obvious color for us to go by, so this time around I'll be using the general theme of the dungeons to decide the color. Since this is the part of the map where we can find the Shadow Tree and, of course, the Shadow Keep, we're going to be using black equipment for this area. The lighting in this area also casts a shadow on everything, and besides the sickly yellow hue in the center, the sky is shrouded in darkness. The first thing I'm gonna do is challenge Dryleaf Dane to an honorable duel to get his hat. And what better weapon to use here than the Black Knife? It isn't upgraded at all, so the damage is pitiful. I was hoping to make up for it with the weapon art, but apparently he can just blast me out of the air. You're not as gullible as those other NPCs, are you, Dane? I'll respect the hand, but that doesn't mean I won't deliver my destined death. After upgrading the Black Knife, I don't have to rely on just the weapon art, although it's still the best thing I have to deal with him. Like most NPCs, he also tends to be stun-locked with R1s until I run out of stamina. He decided to go for a kick while I was using my weapon skill, and that choice ended up being his undoing. Now I have proven myself worthy of the hat. While I may be brimming with fashion, I'm not quite at the same level with power. Though I may be a stagger monster with my club, the enemies in the DLC are all DPS monsters, and if I'm not careful, I will certainly be roll-caught to death. I can't be taking it easy on weapon upgrades here. My club was way below where it should be. I think I came here with like a +8. So before I challenge the first boss, we're gonna need to push the upgrades as far as they'll go. On top of this, going through Shadow Altus some let me get my Shadow Blessing to 5, so hopefully I won't be one-shotted by every attack. Whatever the case, I'm excited to try this boss out again. I've only done one proper playthrough of the DLC so far, not counting co-op, and this boss was one of my personal favorites. If you've seen some of my other videos, you've probably heard me mention a few times how much I enjoy dance boss fights, as in, fights where the moveset has a real rhythm you can follow. I think FromSoft did a great job making the Dancing Lion fight feel like a real dance. It's made very clear that to win this fight, you have to move with the music, not against it. Sometimes I would go against it and try to punish the win move, but this never ended in my favor. Remember, the lion is your dance partner. You have to move as one with the beast, and punish on beat in this dance to the death. Once we learn the choreography, we know when to roll beside our partner and when to separate and take a different position on the stage. Sometimes I was still pretty sloppy, especially with that wind move, and playing with a heavy weapon enables my greedy side when I know those staggers are coming. I was able to get a stagger by playing risky, but I decided not to do that again and just stick to the song I know. The phase transitions are a really good punish window, and if you've been aggressive enough, you can get a free stagger out of them. I usually try to go for a heavy attack right after the riposte, but this is pretty unsafe since you might get bad luck with the follow-up they choose. However, in my case, I should have followed up with a heavy to finish the fight instead of a weapon art. I tried to be cute with my little golden lasers, and that almost ruined the whole fight for me. I got super lucky that my whiff didn't get punished, cause that right there is where the fight should have ended. But apparently, I still had some good luck left over from the Nile fight. Let's hope I didn't use it all on the lion, because I'm gonna need it for Fire Giant. After respeccing out of Faith, I put the rest into Dex, and got exactly 19 Arcane for something I've planned for later. For now, we're going to use the Godskin Peeler, which is white like the Godskin robes themselves to complement the Black Flame. Being a twin blade, it happens to pair well with the Godskin Swaddling Cloth. I was getting healed with it left and right. Somehow, some way, my lucky streak was not over. I just so happened to be in the perfect position to keep attacking him without getting hit by his firestorm, despite the wonky elevation. During Phase 2, he's a lot less mobile. This is the perfect opportunity to use Black Flame Tornado. This skill was made for large enemies like him. Fire Giant or not, no one is immune to the life-sapping flames. I ended up getting trapped against a wall with him just as he was casting 2 fireballs, so this could have ended really badly, but I had not lost favor with Lady Luck just yet, and was awarded with a satisfying victory on the first attempt. After saying goodbye to our good friend Melina, we're gonna cause a little trouble in the snowfield by provoking the Knights Cavalry duo. I managed to pick them off one at a time, but I was running low on Estus, and accidentally aggroed the Phantom Dragonkin. To my surprise, the damage it was doing to the cavalry was basically equal to the damage it did to me, and it ended up giving me the assistance I needed to finish this guy off. With the dragon's help, I knocked this guy off his horse, went in for the critical, then hit him with the Tornado Wake Up. All his efforts to stave off my aggression were too little too late, and the armor I'd been fighting for all along was finally mine. Now if I could only get the tornado to hit this damn bird. I don't know what secrets this creature is hiding, but no matter how well I was doing, it always seemed to know how to turn the fight around for the worse. After going in circles through some different weapons before landing back on my twin blade, I finally got this stupid thing to stay in the tornado long enough for me to kill it. That's what's funny about these games. You can best a giant who is carrying the legacy of all his fallen kin on his back, if you poke his toes a little, but some emaciated chicken is gonna dodge all of your attacks with the finesse of a warrior and peck you to death. I did all that to get the Death Ritual Spear as another black weapon to use. I had to double check and make sure it wasn't silver or anything. It's just the lighting. It's the same color as the black knife, and I counted that one. But even if that weren't the case, I would still count this weapon because I am not letting that bird get the last laugh on me. Before I go back into the DLC, I'm going to take care of the Godskin duo to get the last bell bearing for upgrade materials. As you can see from my armor and weapon, the color for Farum Azula is also black. This is one of the few legacy dungeons that is separate enough from other areas to get its own color. I chose black for this one since it fits the theme of destined death. You know, the black blade, the black knife, even the black fog emitted by the Rune of Death. My strategy for everyone's favorite duo was to hide behind the pillars and spam the weapon art. It's pretty effective at chipping them down, and it can stagger them as well. Even though the Apostle is programmed to sidestep projectiles, it will do him no good because the spears take up an area big enough to catch him in whatever direction he decides to dodge in. This skill is especially useful for hitting them both at once, which is great for bosses that have a shared health pool. I can kind of cheese the noble with it too, because I can spam it as much as I want while he's busy rolling. If you're sure to stay just out of range of the thrust, you can stay behind the pillar and he won't even try to move around it to get you. I was able to bring him from half health to 0 health in the entirety of this exchange. But remember that one born by the pillar, made OP by the pillar, is undone by the pillar. I learned to fear the old pillar after it blocked my escape route from the tornado. I made sure to always have an open space behind me when facing the Apostle. It took a couple more tries after that squandered first attempt, but I ended up beating the Apostle by mindlessly pressing L2 until I got a stagger. What? No, you stupid notification, you made me bow at him. I wanted the point down. Who in their right mind would bow to these frauds? Alright, it's DLC time. This is what I got Helfen Steeple for. We're gonna buff up and hope for the best. I heard this hippo got some hitbox corrections, and while I wasn't expecting much at first, the difference turned out to be like night and day. That initial chomp is a lot less scary. Don't get me wrong, the fight as a whole is still pretty scary, just slightly less scary. Just because the grab is fixed, that doesn't mean I can dodge any of its other moves. I still spent most of this fight trapped under it. The hippo seems to be pretty resistant to frost, which is not good for me, but I was able to consistently stagger it for some big damage. Sometimes I got trapped on the other side of its face and couldn't get the riposte, but you should have enough time to make up for whatever damage you missed while it's staggered. I really just wanted to be done with it, so I was not playing optimally here. I ended up getting lucky, but those chomps and slams are not to be taken lightly. Now it's time to start my work, and pick off Letta's allies one by one so we have less of them to deal with in the final area. I've learned my lesson from my first playthrough about being nice to NPCs. I guess no good deed goes unpunished. After I've dealt with the horn scent, I'm gonna head down to the watering hole and pick up the rest of the dry leaf set. While I'm here, I might as well deal with the Rakshasa, seeing as I'll be using her equipment later. I thought that maybe I could give her the spear collar treatment, but she's not falling for it. They didn't seem to be damaging her that much anyway. For some reason, I thought it would be a great idea to swap to a new weapon right in her face. But at least I'll have a better start next time. I gotta say, she really lives up to her name. This lady is a roll-catching demon. Look, I don't care if she has 1 HP. That's her way of tricking me into walking into another weed cutter. I've learned not to underestimate spacing in this fight. Before I proceed with the DLC, I'm going to punch through the Scaly Misbegotten for the Rusted Anchor, pick up the Axe Talisman in Mistwood, and finally get the Spear Talisman from the Lakeside Crystal Cave. Combined with a now completed Dry Leaf set and the Ritual Sword Talisman, I'm almost fully decked out with brown equipment. Conveniently, all of the attack-specific talismans are brown, so there should be at least a few options for every brown weapon. As much as I use jump attacks, I would have gotten more use out of the Claw Talisman than the Axe Talisman, but regardless, my setup still worked very well against Rellana. About 5 of those should stagger her, and like I do for most other bosses, I can get one more charged attack that's extra chunky with the Axe Talisman. I'd better not get too trigger happy. While it's really tempting to rush the staggers, until we get one, she's not gonna flinch, so she can punish us pretty hard with her combos and roll catch us if we start to panic. She's everything Sullivan wishes he were. The phase transition is a good time to attack her. Just be careful of her swords, since they can still hit you when she's enchanting them. I took a risk because I knew the stagger was coming, and I was able to get her HP really low after the riposte. Now here comes her desperation move. Just press the jump button a little before each moon hits the ground, and you should dodge all 3 hits. It even looks like I jumped a little late on that last one and still dodged it. I don't actually know exactly how the AoE works on that. If she does Carian Sovereignty after this, you can get another good opening. Just be careful because she can retaliate very quickly. I knew better than to rush back into her to get that last hit. So I played it safe and ran away to heal, and soon enough, an opportunity presented itself. And that's Rellana down. I didn't need to fight her or anything. I just did this one for fun and to practice the fight a little. I'm gonna take a scenic walk through the ruined forge of Starfall Pass before continuing down the main path. Well, apparently these blobs don't want me to relax. That's fine, I'll just take my sword and leave. The Ancient Meteoric, or Greatsword, or the Amogus Sword, is our next black weapon for Shadow Keep. This is what I was hinting at when I mentioned I'd need 19 Arcane later down the line. Now it's time to test the waters a bit with Messmer. I'm gonna start the fight with 2 white light charges to test his poise. I've noticed this is enough to stagger a lot of things, so I'm gonna try it against him just in case. Since he is the Impaler, he decides to show me how a real thrust is done. I think I've gathered all the information I needed. Okay, we're gonna stick to some good old-fashioned bonking and get our staggers the honest way. I thought he was gonna fall off there for a second, that would have been funny. Big weapons always embolden me to go for the riskiest trades. But it works a lot more than it should, so can you really blame me? After many tries, the only part of his moveset that I hadn't quite gotten down was the snake combos. I can do phase 1 just fine, but I just never react to the snake attacks in time. Talk about risky trades. I don't know what I was thinking here. I just about threw the whole fight down the drain trying to tank through his fire. I got unbelievably lucky here, and I think I unintentionally figured out how to dodge this snake as well. It seems like it goes right past you if you're in front of him. It's time to go on a detour through some of the optional DLC areas. I'm only going through areas that I actually need equipment from, since this video is going to be really long as it is. First, I'm gonna need to find whatever orange equipment I can find. The first one I can get is the Scorpion Stinger down in the Lake of Rot. Then we can head up to Mount Gelmir for the Fire Scorpion. I also am wearing the Fire Monk armor since it's the only orange-themed armor I could find. Since Mount Gelmir is a volcano and there's lava everywhere, I've chosen orange as the color for this area. This means we can use whatever orange equipment we find right away. I actually need to get past the Godskin Noble for the weapon I want, so to save my Scorpion Stinger, I'm gonna use assorted fire pots to take him down. I'm gonna see how much damage each type of pot can do first. We're doing some good damage with the hefty pots, but clearly it'll take a lot more than one type of pot to beat him. Next, I tried to bring fire pots and Giant's Flame fire pots, but I realized that it would be better in my case to swap out the Giant's Flame pots for Redmane pots, since they scale with strength and not faith. I came back with nearly a full stock of all 3 types of pots, which was more than enough to get the job done. I also realized that I could boost my damage even further with the fire tier. Once again, I used the pillars to my advantage since the pots go right through them. Now that he's out of the way, let the farming begin. I killed these serpents in particular to get not 1, but 2 copies of the Magma Blade. It's a very rare drop, so it could take a while, but for some reason I have had insane luck in this playthrough, so it only took around 30 minutes for me to get one. The Dark Light Catacombs is a transitional dungeon that takes you from one area to another, so you could really consider it to be part of either one. For my playthrough, I chose Abyssal Woods over Shadow Altis so I could use my Magma Blades. Getting here wasn't so bad, but now it's time to really put our Magma Blades to the test and see if they can persevere through adversity. Yori here gets a little extra fire defense when he's in the water, which takes up a big part of the arena, but it doesn't seem to lower my damage in a meaningful way, so I still gave him the Magma Shower. This guy gave me so much trouble on my first playthrough, partly because I was stubbornly refusing to upgrade my Shadow Blessing because I was scared it would trivialize the experience, and partly because of the big boy summon doing that stupid wind attack anytime I closed even a little distance between me and the boss. This time around I had a few hiccups, but overall found this boss to be very easy with the Magma Blade setup and more than 40 vigor. Now we can move on to the Abyssal Woods, where more horrors await us. While yellow would be the more obvious and accurate choice because of the yellow flame of frenzy and, in turn, the color of Midra and Anaya's robes, I felt like I hadn't really gotten to use orange equipment that much, so I settled on orange since it's the secondary color of the frenzied flame. I also was kind of equating yellow with gold to an extent, and wanted something a bit more distinct for this area. I was looking around the area to justify my choice, and there's enough orange for it to work, like the orange streaks in the water, the orange flowers, and these orange highlights around the frenzied flame on the rocks here. Sadly, there's not really much to this area besides this NPC here, and the winter lanterns scattered about. I had to equip the twin bird kite shield with Carian Retaliation to help me deal with these guys, because God knows I can't be trusted with the default parry frames. Once I finally make it to his manse, I can challenge Midra with my Scorpion Stinger. He has a very high fire resistance, and since this is the only orange weapon that isn't a fire weapon, it's our only option. And I'm off to a great start as usual, getting grabbed by the decoy and almost dying to it. Yeah, so I just casually wasted 4 flasks against the first part. I can tell this is gonna go well. After a while, I more or less adapted to using a dagger here. It's too weak to interrupt any of his attacks, even in his first form, but the Scorpion Stinger does have a thrusting heavy attack that only a few other daggers have, which can be pretty useful for bringing down his poise. I was surprised at how frequently I was able to break his stance with it, and what's even better is that the dagger inflicts Scarlet Rot very quickly, which will help chip away at his health in the background. Without a way to heal the madness, I ran out of flasks very quickly, but by this point I had started to get the hang of his patterns. And while this may come as a disappointment to the Lord of Frenzy, I did it with my sanity intact. Seriously, this fight was really fun, and I'm not usually a fan of bosses that rely on ailment buildup, but I think the madness gimmick works really well here. I chose to fight Midra in this run because I will be using the Great Sword of Damnation in the near future. It'll be fun, trust me. Now for our final diversion before we head back to the main path, we're gonna face Bale the Dread in the Jagged Peak so we can get our reward from the Dragon Priestess. For this place, there's a clear red theme going on with the Ancient Dragon Lightning and Red Skybox, so we get to use some red equipment one more time. I've chosen to wear the Rakshasa set minus the helmet to boost my damage a little, and of course I also have Rakshasa's Great Katana. For my talismans, I've chosen to focus on getting as much HP as possible to offset the extra damage I'll be taking. I went to the Fogriff Catacombs for the +3 version of the Crimson Medallion, and went to the Finger Ruins next door for the superior Crimson Seed Talisman. Usually dragon fights are pretty long, so I'm definitely gonna need the boosted flasks. I had been attempting this for a little while, so by now I had virtually memorized his moveset, focusing mainly on damaging either his head or leg pit thing. As long as you remember to instantly roll out of him after a couple attacks, you should be able to mostly avoid the fire breath punish. It's not super hard to break his stance either. As long as you take advantage of all your openings, you'll get one eventually. With my Great Katana, I could get a pretty big window to do damage with one weed cutter before the riposte, and one after. I even got a burst of bleed as well, so I got him to very low health before he could do his first laser. This is good for me because the laser has proven to be the only thing that I can't dodge for the life of me. It doesn't help that I can't see anything. Thankfully, I was able to take him down before he had a chance to do another one. I had no flasks left and was completely at the mercy of the attack he chose to do next. As a thank you gift, the priestess will leave us the Flowerstone Gavel for later use. Next, we'll be traversing the beautiful ruins of Roth. These verdant, forested ruins could be no color but green. Well, I guess pink could also work due to the influence of Romina's rot on the area, but I decided to stick with green. You can see that I've already collected some green-themed armor up to this point. Green armor is pretty scarce in this game, but the DLC did add a few greenish sets, like the Common Soldier chest piece, and the Verdigris set. I combined this with the Guilty Hood from base game for a surprisingly cohesive look. Before we challenge Romina, we'll be sure to visit the altar here to make the Sword of Light. As I mentioned earlier, I did visit the catacombs, so we already have the stone-sheathed sword on hand. In addition to that, I got the lizard greatsword from the imps, which just so happens to be a green weapon. Naturally, we're going to be using a lot of stamina boosting gear as well. The lizard sword has a really interesting heavy attack. In addition to the thrust, it also shoots out a projectile, so we have a ranged option if we need it. It doesn't travel far enough to get her during the jump, but it should at least land anywhere in mid-range. Romina's poise is very low, but don't mistake that for weakness, she can hit pretty hard. But I almost forgot about the Viridian hidden tier we got from the Fire Dude. It's the same as the Cerulean version, but for stamina. I call this the Greed Enabler tier. I didn't bother showing any Furnace Golem fights on screen because I find them very boring. On another note, I did turn it to night again to see her attacks glow in the dark. But speaking of greed, I went really overboard with the unlimited stamina. Give me 15 seconds of free swings and I'll be below 100 HP in no time. At least I got the stagger though, you gotta give me that one. Overall, she's not that difficult, and her attacks are fun to dodge. I found that jumping worked well for many of her attacks, and when in doubt, just roll into her. You don't want to mess with those butterflies though, the AoE around them is very generous. In any case, Romina's gone and the ceiling tree is burnt, so we have no choice but to proceed towards the final destination of Miquella himself. Anir Alim is one of those dungeons I mentioned before that's separate enough from the rest of the map to get its own color. In this case, I chose white as the color to fit with the theme of Divine Light and Miquella, as well as the fact that the spiral pillars look white when viewed from a distance. This means we have a chance to test out the Sword of Light. It was very useful against the bird enemies since they are weak to holy damage. The weapon art even has knockdown, which is pretty cool. The only thing standing in my way to the final boss is Leda and her allies. Ally. I thought I was being clever getting rid of all of them, but this fight wasn't the walk in the park that I expected. The first part with Dain seemed like it wouldn't be too bad, but he has way too much health for me to get even close to finishing him before Leda shows up. It doesn't help that they both have a flask and are constantly vomiting holy projectiles in my face. Leda over here has the buff remover 5000, so I couldn't have my light buff either. I really shouldn't have neglected those side quests, but at least I have off-brand Ansbach. Okay, Natan, show me your stuff. Since this is just an NPC fight, it technically isn't against my rules to use the Winged Scythe again. I really just wanted to get this done because I do not enjoy fighting a hyper-aggressive NPC gank squad with 15,000 HP apiece. The Winged Scythe can stop their healing with the Angel's Wings skill, and it does bleed damage, so that'll make it easier to deplete their inflated health bars. I was trying to stall them until my friend arrived, but the moment I backed off, Dain got his healing back, so at best I can get a 2v2. They kept wanting to gang up on him, so he didn't last very long. But the bleed buildup he had already done to Leda made it easier for me to bleed her out with my scythe. It's too bad I missed my chance to get the white mask. But at least Natan was here to do some extra damage. Leda was the first to fall in battle, and Dain quickly followed. I think I'll just help myself to that armor. Now for the part of the DLC we've all been waiting for, the already infamous final boss. For this, I'm gonna try the Sword of Light again, and now I have the Pearl Drake Talisman to go with the Swaddling Cloth, which will give us just a tad of holy defense. I didn't show the first attempt for this, since that consisted of me literally walking in and getting stomped. The fight continued in that fashion for maybe an hour or so, until I slowly started to piece things together. To be honest, I didn't bother recording this fight until I could consistently make it to Phase 2. On my first playthrough, I didn't understand anything about this fight, and only beat it because I had bleed. So now I have to make up for what I didn't do then and spend my time learning it in this run. Phase 2 was really intimidating at first, and kinda still is, but I'm telling you, these two can smell the fear on you. If you aren't cool and collected, they will steamroll you without a hint of mercy. Age of Compassion, my ass. What I'm saying is, you need to tell yourself, I got this, because you do. If you can do Phase 1, you can do Phase 2. Phase 2 is almost identical to Phase 1, with a little extra razzle-dazzle on the combos, and the brightness of 1,000 suns emanating from the screen. I understand that I only got 2 hits on you, Radahn. You don't have to dance over my corpse. Aside from all the grievances I have with this fight, which is a lot, I do appreciate what they were trying to do, even if it didn't necessarily translate to the best boss fight. I think this is the only fight in a FromSoft game where I found myself counting rolls in my head like I was playing an instrument. I think it's a great idea in theory to have strict roll timings that challenge more experienced players who are sick of being able to roll through everything. But at the same time, the strictness in the timing may also limit your playstyle a bit if you have to roll in the same pattern every time. Admittedly, I don't understand too much about this fight mechanics-wise, so maybe I'm wrong, but for me it seemed like I could only ever roll in one direction throughout his combos. The only attack he has in Phase 1 that I can't dodge consistently is that left-hand slash attack. I just do not understand what to do here. I only managed to dodge it when the elevation was uneven, or when my brain was on autopilot and I wasn't paying attention. That's what happened here when I dodged it perfectly. My subconscious is hiding something from me, and I'm gonna find out what it is. Since their holy defense goes through the roof in Phase 2, I farmed for the Celebrant's Rib Rake and infused it with bleed to make up for its low physical damage. Starting with this in Phase 2 meant I could get the first bleed faster and not have them already be in the second tier of resistance. The bleed buildup is very low, so it'll take a bit to bleed them out, so it's mostly a morale thing so I can feel rewarded for my aggression. I've memorized his new Phase 2 attacks except for the Meteor one, where he brings the clones in. I haven't gotten the timing down on that final explosion. Right before he went up into the sky, I got one more burst of bleed. I guess this is compensation for the first Radahn fight, where I didn't get it in time. To be extra safe, I used the bubble here before I started running, and I am so glad I had the foresight to do that, because sure enough, I got clipped by the explosion, and guess what? If it weren't for the bubble, I would have died because I wasn't at full health. This bubble is my hero, the true MVP of the run. I can't even begin to describe the feeling of joy when he starts with a familiar combo that you know you can dodge, after days of attempting this with no luck. I ultimately did this for nothing. I don't need any of their equipment for the run. I just had to do it. I couldn't just go to the DLC only to leave the final boss alive. At least I get a cool headband for the emotional distress. Well, that's it for the DLC, so all that's left to do now is the late game boss rush. I thought I would be fine with an unupgraded Rivers of Blood since I'm like level 150, but I can always count on myself to lose with all the odds in my favor. Geez, why is this guy giving me more trouble than the one in Castle Sol? It took getting knocked off my horse a couple times for me to think, you know, maybe I should get rid of the spirits first before rushing him with Corpse Piler. While I'm not going to do too much damage with that, it's a good way to build up bleed. The only other thing I can rely on for immediate damage is criticals, and those aren't too hard to get. Sure enough, when I patiently picked off his soldiers, he went down without much trouble. Now that we have the needle, we can speedrun Millicent's quest, so we can meet up with her at the Haligtree. But before we do that, we need a weapon to challenge Loretta with, so let's make the Pull Blade of the Bud and see what it can do. Halberds are one of my favorite weapon classes, so it's no surprise that I took to this one quickly. Ramina's Purification sounds fun, so I tested that out as soon as I got a chance. I didn't realize that the follow-up was automatic and accidentally did 2 of them, but I somehow survived, so that's more Scarlet Rot for Loretta. As you may have noticed by my Finger Maiden dress and weapon choice, the color for the Haligtree is pink due to the influence of the Scarlet Rot on the environment. I know it's called Scarlet Rot and all, but besides the Lake of Rot, it looks to me more like a subtle coral pink than a saturated scarlet red. Even the boluses to cure it are pink. So I'm gonna consider it pink for my purposes. Besides, it's not often we see pink in these games at all. Even the Finger Maiden dress is stretching it a bit, so why not use the few pink weapons given to us by the DLC? The Rot Pull Blade isn't the best option for the Rotted Tree Spirit, so I might as well switch to my other pink weapon so I can fight this thing from a distance. As for Millicent's sisters, the Pole Blade will be pretty good for this. The sweeping AoE can hit multiple targets, so this will help keep them distracted while Millicent goes in for the kill. We can also trick them into rolling off the ledge with this, but beware, a mindless spammer will meet a similar fate. Now that we've done her quest, we can get our one and only pinkish talisman, which is the Rotten Winged Sword insignia. I don't think a hammer is the most optimal weapon for the multi-hit boost, but we don't have anything to lose by using it. This may come as a surprise, but I am actually very comfortable with the Malenia fight and don't have trouble dodging her moves. I used to do a lot of co-op in this fight, so I've learned a few tricks, although I must say I'm pretty rusty. The only thing I'm a bit iffy on dodging is a close-range waterfowl. However, I can reduce her chances of doing it up close, because the Flower Dragon Bolt is a great harassment tool to get her to do it from far away, so I don't have to take the risk by approaching her myself. Plus, if she is standing in water, she'll take some extra damage from the lightning, and even better, if she's already been hit by it once, she'll take even more damage because of the debuff it applies. I've heard that it's bugged right now, so it isn't even at its full power, but like I said, we're not really using it for damage. I actually did get aggressive enough to get a boost from my talisman, but normally I would only be super aggressive if I knew she was near a stagger. Going for the extra charge attack after the critical is very risky since she could go right into waterfowl, but if you are comfortable dodging it at point blank, I'd say always go for the extra R2. My game plan mostly revolves around jump attacks. Those can interrupt most of her moves as long as she doesn't have hyper armor. It still took me a while to get back into my rhythm, especially with how burnt out I was from Consort Radahn. But that's okay with me because I really enjoy this fight and have a good time fighting her regardless. Malenia is my personal favorite boss in Elden Ring because I find her moveset fun to engage with, even her waterfowl dance. Plus, I just love the spectacle of it. The butterflies, the flowers, it's all very beautiful. Malenia is the last of the side content I'll be doing for this run. But I am gonna have to jump into the DLC really quick to get a weapon for Maliketh. I'm gonna defeat Swordhand Anna for the Claws of Night, and while I'm at it, I guess I'll steal her look as well, since I did pick up her set at some point in the playthrough. I've heard good things about these claws, so I'm eager to test them out against Maliketh. He is very susceptible to bleed, so Scattershot Throw will bleed him out in no time. I kept blocking on accident because I keep on thinking I'm power stancing in DS2, but that's still not an excuse for whatever was going on here. I found it really strange that I died to the Beast Clergyman phase and not the actual Maliketh part. Then again, he has a lot of projectiles, and the pillars are my friends. Yep, my same old backstabbing friends. The Claws of Night honestly shredded him. This was truly a fight between two beasts. Now that we're back to Gold and Leyndell, it's time for the part of the playthrough I've been looking forward to the most. Oh, Gideon. Even with all your knowledge, you don't even know what I have in store for you. I am going to show you what a real spammer is capable of. Here we go. Now this is a fight. I'm tired of all these NPC posers with their underhanded tactics. I'd rather get hit with the power bomb than whatever spell spam Gideon has, because even if I die, at least I look cool while I'm getting killed. With some of these combos, I'm not sure where it ends, but I'll get used to it eventually. I hope. Sadly, the barbed spear doesn't have a cheese button, so I have to fight with honor. In fact, I'm so honorable that I'm fighting him with a weapon that does holy damage, so he'll be absorbing a good amount of the damage I do. I can't count on the bleed that much since the build-up rate is so low, but the spear was honestly still putting out some decent damage on its own. It's a little slower than I expected since it is a great spear rather than just a spear, so sometimes I went for pokes that would only work on regular spears and got punished for it. My favorite attacks to use were the jumping attack and the light attack out of roll. I staggered him easily with these moves, which saved me from getting caught in another combo. The critical was just shy of killing him, so I had to frantically run up to poke him when I realized he was still alive. Of course, now I get a bleed. I want to switch to the Hand of Melania for the final boss, so I respec to have 43 dexterity, with the Finger Heirloom Talisman covering the remaining 5 points. For my other talismans, I have the Golden Braid for extra holy defense, the Blessed Dew Talisman, and I got the Winged Sword insignia last minute for a small multi-hit attack boost. While the boost is small, the Katana moveset makes good use of it, and I had a lot more opportunities to spam R1 than I remembered. Radagon is a fight that initially never clicked with me, but he is a lot easier to deal with if you prioritize holy defense. It makes his big slams less scary. After a couple tries with Radagon, I made it to Elden Beast. Our holy defense will still be very helpful, but only if some effort is made towards dodging its attacks. I went crazy here and staggered it out of the sword slam. Look, I'm ready to end this, okay? And let's finish it off with a waterfowl. Hey, where do you think you're going? Wait. I almost forgot. I can summon Torrent now. You can't get away from me for long. Whoa, so that really just trivializes that attack, doesn't it? Good. Elden Beast deserves it. And now we finish it with a waterfowl! A very satisfying victory to end this playthrough. Our journey through the lands between may be over, but someone must watch over these vibrant, colorful lands. So I chose a few different colors to wear so I could have attire fit for a lord. I think this was a fun choice for the first Elden Ring video on the channel. This was an idea I thought of a while ago that I couldn't make work in the other games. Elden Ring is a lot more focused on the separation of the areas, so there were clear themes for me to go off of. This challenge had a good balance of difficulty, so I think this would be a fun one to try if you're someone who wants to add just a little spice to your next playthrough. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I encourage you to stick around for the next one.